Hello and welcome back to Factorio C Block. In the last episode, we built a small engine build up here, and that'll be useful for the future, but it kind of came up as far as research goes, and it seemed to make sense to me to go ahead and get it built. That way we had it ready to go for when the time came to actually needing it. For now, though, we're kind of just going to leave that alone, and we're going to actually, as you may have noticed, there are some changes here to the base, so we're going to actually talk about those for a few minutes and then get into a new build. But before we do that, I want to start a new research. And that research that I want to start is Geode Processing 1, and we'll talk about that when it's done and we get going at things here. So, as you can tell, I did a few changes to, as I promised I was going to do, or as I mentioned I was going to do at least, to the whole ore processing that we have so far. I was going to leave some extra space in here, in this area here, so that we could work toward making the chunks with the hydro refining. But I thought about that, and if I did this correctly, those can just go into this space anyway. So I think we're all right, but I don't really want to do these yet until we get to a little bit better of a place, and plus until we need the additional ores like aluminium and we have that one already, silver and zinc. I guess that's it. Until we get to needing those next few ores, I didn't really want to spend time on those. Because they actually are worth less to us as far as for the ores that we're actually using. The four main ones we're using of getting our way to iron, copper, tin, and lead, although we're using very little lead. But getting our way to those, and of course bronze, I don't think I even have it hooked up to the, I'd have hooked up sort of to the bus. And then I reconnected everything to the bus over here, and I also gave myself space for a little bit of extra bus than we had before. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks of 4 here, which I think might give us a little bit of time, but we'll see how that goes in the long run. And finally, I also replaced almost every power pole in the place with a lighted electric power pole. That's one of the mods that I've had in since the beginning, but because making the light bulbs at the early part of the game is a little bit more difficult in terms of they require something, and something we didn't have. Basic circuits for a while. I didn't make them, and then I just forgot about them for a while, but I don't put them in here in with the labs because I like to see the spark of the labs when they're actually working. So I don't put them there because it feels to me like it makes them stand out less during the nighttime. So today what I want to do, though, after we've talked about that, and I rebuilt the reprocessing area of the slag and crushed stone waste product also into a little bit more compact of a build over here. So if you would like to see that, I'll come up here and you can kind of just see how that works. If you'd like to see the blueprint of that, come into Discord and let me know, and I can share the blueprints for any of the 3 things that I've made kind of repeatable or regular blueprints for. And even if you want some of these for some reason, I can also give you some of that. But I have this one, of course. I have the power and fuel one way down there. This one over here, that is. And then, of course, this little reprocessing one here that takes in. It's not exactly this one. I had to reconfigure it after I designed it in my other save. But because even though my 2 saves are, at relatively the same place, they are not. They're not laid out the same. So each time I do something in here, I'm doing it a little bit different than I did over there. All right, so we did that Geode Processing 1. And this takes in geodes of all different colors, 6 different colors, in fact, and produces crystal dust and crushed stone from that, which then we can use that crystal dust plus some sulfuric acid to make crystal slurry. And then we can turn that crystal slurry and some mineralized water into more mineral sludge for the making of more ores and some sulfuric wastewater. And why do we want to do this? Well, for the purposes of getting more mineral sludge from different sources, because these geodes can come from 2 different places. One of those places is this process here of hydro refining, which gives us a 50% chance for a geode for every process we make, which is good because it gives us some geodes that we can use. But there's another place we can get geodes, and that is in the washing process. And that's the one that I would like to take a look at today. Let's see, is that this one? Yeah, washing for geodes right here. That is taking heavy mud water, which we already have some experience with, making mud for landfill, and some water, of course, and we get a weird combination of fractional geodes from that. So I've made up some materials, and because I did do a design in the in Hellmod, but then I deleted the design from Hellmod because I'd like to actually do that with you all. I've gone back and forth a little bit on whether I should do designs in Hellmod on camera or off, and I'm going to probably go back and forth on it a few more times before we get to even the next point in this base, you know, the next level of science or whatever. But I think it's kind of important to talk about some of the concepts in designing the factory plans, whether you're using Hellmod or Factory Planner or whichever one, because reading the recipe numbers, especially with all the combinations of different things, the time on the recipe, the products of the recipe, the ingredients of the recipe, and how do you calculate 75% of 2 plus 60% of 1 plus 60% of 1 plus 75% of 1 plus 75% of 2 plus 1. Well, you can do the last one pretty easily, but how do you count that? And doing the math on that, and it gets a little complicated. Plus, you add that to the complication of the crafting speed on the machine and things like that, and it gets to be a very complicated effect, especially in a larger mod pack or more complicated mod pack like C-Block, Pionodons notwithstanding. I know some people, Bold Viking, for example, are able to do that math in their head very easily on the fly kind of thing. I can do it, but I can't do it as fast as that, and I don't really want to try. So we're going to do a new production line here, and we'll pick the recipe of, once again, mineral sludge, because that's kind of where we want to end up with for all the things here. But we're going to do it with this recipe here of crystal slurry to mineral sludge with charcoal filtering. Note there is a ceramic filtering recipe here for both the one we're using currently and later, but we don't have those unlocked yet. I don't remember when they come. But also you have to have filtration units 2 or 3 to do that. Whereas with one, you have to use one of these 2 recipes. So anyways, charcoal filtering, we have charcoal, so that's not a problem. We have plenty of charcoal, so it's definitely not a problem. And we could easily make more by stamping another copy of that blueprint. So that's thirdly not a problem. So this is kind of a, standard thing, of course. I don't know how much mineral sludge I want to get out of the system. Actually, I do, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. And this is just the basic recipe, so of course we have that. The first thing I want to do is just get rid of the charcoal filtration process here. So we'll click that to add that recipe in, and then it just broke this thing. So I want to put this back to 50 for now. We're going to change that number very soon, and I know what I want to change it to, but I want to get there as part of the conversation. So we replace the exchange of those, of course, with the charcoal that's needed there on the input side. That's fine. And then we need to look at this part, which is crystal slurry next. So we'll expand out crystal slurry. And there is there's a technology that we could actually research now called Geode Processing 2, but I want to do, and it also unlocks that crystal slurry from crystal seedling, or producing crystal seedling. I don't know what this does. So and we will do that, but I want to do kind of each technology to talk about how each technology works. So we're definitely going to do this one, not because we need it particularly, but because I want to do it. So anyway, back to the factory plan. So we're going to do that again, and we're going to pick this one here. So this one, by the way, side note, refines each geode into the crystal slurry itself instead of going through this crystal dust amalgamation sort of thing. But I think this is better at this early stage of the game, and you're not getting a whole bunch of geodes just because you can do this in one set rather than having to do it in a bunch of these different sets in all these different liquefiers. I didn't really look at the efficiency of the dust versus the slurry produced versus how many geodes you need to make the dust or anything like that at this point, because again, that's a future recipe and we're not going to do that. So let's do this. And so in order to, by the way, we get 50 slurry makes 50 sludge. In order to make 50 slurry, yes, we need to have 10 crystal dust. So we'll expand that one out. And that one comes from crushing all these different geodes. And we'll need to add all 6 of these in. And the reason for that will be self-evident momentarily. So for this, it immediately broke the calculation. It thinks that we just need to have 20 blues and none of the other ones, and that'll give us 10 crystal dust, and we're happy. But we're gonna use a little bit of a trick, I guess, for lack of a better word, here in Hellmod to refine that calculation in just a moment. We also will, of course, have to deal with bringing in the sulfuric acid, which we have ways to do that. Not the least of which is refining this sulfuric wastewater a little bit later. So let's go ahead and add the recipe for the blue geodes. Now, of course, we have the results from the hydro refining, but we're not going to do those. Instead, we're going to come over here and use this washing for geodes that we looked at a few moments ago, which gives us all the geodes in that crazy ratio. The system is calculating it at 20 of those, 8, 8, 10, and 20. And I think if you looked at the recipe here, 20 it's saying 2 at 75%. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of doing some fuzzy math, I think, on those a little bit, but it ends up with that calculation and 13.334 of these. But it's going to need a crap ton of these, but that's because it's trying to match 20 against 20 with 10 against 10. We don't want that. So instead, we want to use this feature in Hellmod called a matrix solver. Oh, and by the way, you also see that, hey, you're kicking out all this waste product that you don't need to be kicking out because it's not calculating the user. So let's use this matrix solver. And what that's going to do for us is that's going to recalculate these numbers here on these crushers to reduce the amount of resources used by, or geodes used to make crystal dust, and therefore reduce the total amount of all of them to match exactly the output at ratio of the X number of washing plants. Now I want to reduce this number by a little bit. There was a reason that I picked a number that I did, and maybe I'll notice that number again when I put it in here, but I believe it was 37.8. And why was that the number? Maybe it was it was 5 washing plants that I wanted. And the reason I wanted 5 washing plants is because of this one last thing here, which is the amount of heavy mud water is produced here with exactly, or very nearly exactly, one washing plant from the viscous mud water from the viscous pump. And so we have that now, and that's going to produce a little bit of excess mud, which we'll just dump into our landfill process. The mud water is, of course, matched there. We need some water input here, and then we're going to have this waste product of hydrogen sulfide gas again as well. So kind of narrowing that down, or now that we've done that, I should say, I don't want the matrix solver to be on anymore. I want to compute by element again, which should have... Did it break? I hope it didn't break. It didn't break. Okay, good. I thought I saw it change something here, but it didn't. Or at least I didn't see it do that. So we need to... so that saved these percentages, which is what I wanted the matrix solver to do for me, was come up with those percentages. But now we need to manage the sulfur thing, that is the sulfuric wastewater, and the sulfuric acid thing, as well as dealing with the mineralized water and the crushed stone, providing mineralized water and deal with the crushed stone, so that we need to do this part next. And so what I want to do then, of course, is calculate the sulfuric acid needed, which we can do by this, and we can do by this here, which is sulfuric acid from sulfur dioxide gas and purified water. That needs a bit of sulfur dioxide gas, so we'll take that from sulfur and oxygen gas. And then the sulfur we want to take not from the hydrogen sulfide gas here, at least not yet, but instead from, is it here? Yes, sulfuric wastewater purification, which we've done before. We did that in these areas up here quite a few times. We've done here too. I can't remember now. But we want to do the sulfuric wastewater purification, which turns that sulfuric wastewater into sulfur, mineralized water, and purified water. But that tied itself to the wrong primary output. You can see this dot here indicates that this is the primary output. So what we want to do is control click on the sulfur, making that our primary output, which reduces the amount of sulfur needed to match this instead. And it nullifies the sulfur. It nullifies, of course, the sulfur dioxide and nullifies the sulfuric acid on both sides. Now, what do we need next? Well, we have an excess of purified water. We have a small excess of sulfuric wastewater, which we've dealt with before also over here by just dumping it into a clarifying pool. No problem with that. We'll do that again. But then we also need a bunch of mineralized water, and we need some oxygen. But we have a surplus of purified water over here, so maybe we can electrolyze that purified water to make some more oxygen. We could see about that. We could do either one of these two. This one requires to have those electrolyzer electrodes and then to refine them. So I think we're better off just doing this simple recipe here. That's going to produce with just less than 2 electrolyzers, which we could have done this with 1 if we'd have done the cycle, but this is fine. That's going to demand, though, some excess purified water. We don't want to feed excess purified water in there. We want to just get rid of what we had. So we need to knock this down just a bit. Is that there? Yes. So we had, let me delete this again just briefly. We had 12.285. And the matrix solver will do this, but it goes haywire. So I'm very careful about how I use the matrix solver. But we have 12.285, and this will demand 42.525 of us. So if I do this, 12.285 divided by 42.525 times 100, that exactly uses all of the purified water we had. Gives us a little bit of excess hydrogen, which we'll just vent. We're going to vent the hydrogen sulfide as well. And then we have still a need for a little bit more oxygen, which I can do just by doing the air separation, which then of course needs to have compressed air. And we need just a fraction of a chemical plant and a fraction of an air filter to accomplish that then. And then we don't have the excess purified water. We could have just done this rather than using this method, but I like to use the stuff rather than vent it when it makes sense. And we'd have to vent more nitrogen then in that case. So maybe it's a wash. Either way, this is more interesting, I think. And then the final thing we need to do is get this mineralized water, and we luckily have a nice surplus of crushed stone, so we should be able to mineralize the crushed stone here, which nullifies that, and we still have a small excess of crushed stone left, which we can just shunt up this way and into this recycler bit here if we want, or we could do something else with it if we wanted to as well. So that's our finished plan, I think. We're taking in viscous mud water from the seafloor dredge pump. We're taking in some water, and we're bringing in some fuel for the charcoal, or not fuel, but charcoal. It's not actually acting as fuel, it's just charcoal here. We're going to be producing that mineral sludge at exactly that number because it's the 1 in 5 washing plants. We could obviously change that number and increase that number to anything we wanted to do. But I liked that idea, although we could go up to, say, enough for 2 of these, which is 50, I think, and then all these numbers would scale up accordingly, and we would need to have more of each of these then. I don't know if that messes with the numbers, but we can see later possibly. Then we need to have sulfuric wastewater being dumped in a clarifying pool. We have that excess crushed stone, we have that excess mud, and we have 3 things that we need to flare, which is kind of unfortunate, but on the other hand, the nitrogen came from the air, so we can go back to it. The hydrogen came from water, effectively, from the purified water. Oh yes, they came from that, so we can flare that too. And then, of course, the hydrogen sulfide gas is that byproduct, and we don't really have a use for it at this point until we need more sulfuric acid for some reason. So I think that's a good plan, but I also think that's more than enough of an episode for today. So while we didn't actually get anything directly accomplished in terms of building a factory, we do have a factory plan, and we can get that set up in the next episode, I think. So I think I have everything made that we need for this factory, give or take maybe some belts or some pipes or something, and we can work on that in the next episode. I think the best place for it would be somewhere either in this area or in this area, although I don't think I want to put it here because I plan to continue extending these down as we need more. So maybe we do it in this area. We pipe in the water and the mud here, and that way we can easily dump the excess mud over to this way. We can dump the crushed stone up this way, and then obviously the mineral sludge, which was our whole point of this, can get into this pipe here via this one right here maybe, and we can run that into this system here that is actually fully backed up now. I did, by the way, put buffer boxes into this area, and that one's getting pretty full, in order to make sure that we were continually processing out the mineralized water as before. Actually, maybe we should just convert it to mineralized water instead of sending the stone up here. Let me know your thoughts on that. Maybe there's one of them that's more efficient than the other in terms of how much ore it produces. I think this is more efficient, but let me know your thoughts on that. Maybe I'll do some math myself, and then in the next episode we will take a look at how to build this and get it connected up to our factory, the rest of our factory. So thank you all for joining me, and I will see you then. Bye for now.